So I'll hit you with these kind of questions since it's the off season in the dead period. So you started watching South Carolina football when?
Probably 2002. I was about 11 years old, so to give you an idea of my age. That's end of 2002, beginning of 03 is when it really clicked,
Yep.
like the die hard, like what it really meant. So I'd say end of 02, beginning of 03. That's really when my fandom really, really kicked into high gear.
So who's your favorite Gamecock of all time?
On the football side, it's got to be Connor Shaw. It's got to be Shaw. I'm a huge Shaw guy, the greatest winner, I think, in school history. There's other decorated players that I really do like and adore, but I've actually got all kinds of Connor Shaw stuff in my studio, and I've had conversations with Shaw, had him on the show. I'm a Connor Shaw guy. For me, it's default, not even a thought. It's Connor Shaw. He just the epitome of a winner, the epitome of a Gamecock, tough as nails, undefeated at home. The records and the way he played the game, it all speaks for itself. Led the greatest run in USC football history. I mean, need I say more? So,
do you have a favorite player on the team right now?
Favorite? That's a really interesting question because it's, as you know, I'm sure, like it's a different dynamic when you cover the team. Favorite? If I had to pick a favorite player right now, it's hard not to pick Jaheim Bell. I mean, the dude's a freak. I think he's going to have a huge, huge year. I go offensively, Jaheim Bell, and defensively, I won't say he's my favorite player like in that way, but a guy that I'm really excited for and intrigued about, Jordan Strawn on the defensive line. I think he really quietly had a big year. The transfer from Georgia State, actually. So he'll start the season off against his old team. I think Jordan Strawn, we all love to talk Pickens and Birch and the former 5-star prospects and what have you. I think Strawn could be the guy on the D-line that has a really, really big year this year. So, I'd say Bell, Strawn, but obviously, who doesn't love Spencer Rattler, right? You know what I mean? So, I guess I'd go with those two guys right now, Bell and Strawn on defense.
Chris, I'm going to let you take this question one of two ways.
Mm-hmm.
All-time greatest player of all time in the history of the program, if you want to go decades back and have to survey the entire history of the program, or if you just want to go, since you've been a fan, greatest player, either one.
I'll go for the history of Carolina football. And for me, you got to go George Rogers. The guy won the most prestigious award you can win as a college football player, the Heisman Trophy. You know what I mean? So there's a lot of, definitely when you ask a question like that, there's a lot of recency bias because we're going to when I rank the top 5 wide receivers, for example, and when we get into June, we'll do a lot of that content. We rank the top 5 at basically every single position. As we've seen our buddy Big Game Boomer, people love lists. They love rankings. They love to argue over them. So we will do that, right? And we did that last year as well. But like when I do top 5 receivers, I rank Alshon Jeffrey number 1. Folks that have been watching the Gamecocks since the 80s, they rank Sterling Sharp number 1 because that's the guy they saw. So while I did not see George Rogers play, though, and it would be easy to have recency bias and say Jadeveon Clowney or Connor Shaw or whoever, I look at literally won the most prestigious award you can win at the collegiate level. And you watch film on George Rogers, you watch those old highlights, man, I don't think it mattered. He was playing in the 80s, the 90s, 2000s, present day. I think Big George is, when you just think top to bottom, he's the best football player to ever wear the garnet and black. I'd have to go with George Rogers, man. Again, Heisman Trophy winner. Need I say more?
All right, Chris, of course, those 3 consecutive teams went 11-2, top 5 to 10 in the nation under Steve Spurrier about a decade ago. Connor Shaw at quarterback. You got those teams. You got a team that, of course, went to the SEC championship game in 2010. So regardless, for a lot of people, this is going to be like a championship type situation, but it could be like a meaningless game in the middle of October when your team's 2-7. Whatever hits you. What is the most exhilarating victory? Again, it doesn't have to be important, just personally to you. Most just, you still look back on it, put a smile on your face, exhilarating win ever.
I got 2, if that's okay. They're tied at the top. 2013, and I was at both games, which helps tremendously, obviously, but 2013, South Carolina Clemson, Gamecocks going for their 5th straight, and this ranks as maybe the most exhilarating moment I've had as a Gamecock fan. Certainly one of the most. And I'm not sure if you'd recall this play, but South Carolina's driving down the field. They're up by a touchdown or whatever, but there's still time left in the game, 3.5 minutes. Gamecocks are trying to ice the game, and South Carolina runs a trick play where Cooper motions over, takes Cooper and Connor Shaw. They switch positions. They motion. Pharaoh Cooper goes in at quarterback in the shotgun. Brandon Wilds to his right. Trick play. He fakes the run. Wilds slips out, throws the pass over the linebacker's head. Wilds catches it, runs in the end zone to basically seal the game. And I mean, that's the loudest I've ever heard Willie B, or one of the loud. I would say the loudest. I would say the loudest because I was not there in 2012 for the. I was not there for the Georgia game. I don't know if that's me or you, by the way, but I was not there for the Georgia game or the Alabama game in 2010. The other one I would say is actually the following year, 2014, when Carolina took on Georgia. And that was the game, I don't know if you recall, Georgia had Todd Gurley, Nick Chubb, Sony Michel. I mean, they were loaded in the backfield. And South Carolina, of course, had just got blown out by Texas A&M. They're sort of reeling. We're thinking we're going to contend for an SEC championship. Connor Shaw's gone, JD's gone, all that good stuff. But that 2014 Georgia game, it's a game that gets delayed an hour and a half or 2 hours because of lightning, a 3:30 kickoff effectively turning into a night game. It rained that day, a 38-35 ball game. I'll tell you this, Mark, because we all have the habit of what we love doing is during the summer, we'll sit down and we'll rewatch old games. That 2014 South Carolina Georgia game, that is my favorite game to sit down and rewatch of any South Carolina game ever. Like, just from an entertainment value, an entertainment standpoint, a back and forth game, dramatics down to the wire. Marshall Morgan misses that field goal late. Again, that is one of the loudest, if not the loudest, I've ever heard Willie B when he missed that kick. The 4th and inches that Dylan Thompson sneaks, and Georgia fans, I think, still don't think he got it. The measurement that was all over CBS. I mean, that was just an insane football game. So it'd probably be those two for me, honestly. Those two. Honorable mention would be 2005. I was at the season opener. I was at Steve Spurrier's debut as head coach. I'll never forget Mitchell to Whiteside to open up the scoring and open up the Spurrier era. And that was just obviously a really, really special night for, very obvious reasons. But those two games I mentioned, that 2013 Clemson and that 2014 Georgia game were really, really awesome nights.
All right, folks, come on now. We got Chris Phillips here talking up South Carolina football, the Spurs Up Show. Got to get on over there. Check out talking the Gamecocks, not just football, coming down to baseball as well. And now we got to go the other route. Excruciating defeats, still sting, still hurt.
Where do we start? Where do we start when it comes to South Carolina? I'll tell you, the last time I ever cried over a South Carolina football game was I was 15 years old, and I don't know if you recall this one. 2006, South Carolina at Florida. Jarvis Moss blocks the field goal as time expires. Gamecocks, that was probably the best I've ever seen to this day, the best I've ever seen a South Carolina football team play and not win. That 16-15, I believe, was the final score loss in Gainesville. The Jarvis Moss, a guy that shouldn't have even been playing. He was supposed to be suspended. Got his big paw up. He was like 6'7". Got his big paw up, though. Blocked the Ryan Succop field goal. That one ranks up there. 2013 Tennessee was excruciating. I mean, you look back, all the games that kept South Carolina out of the SEC title. 11, I was at the 2011 Auburn game. I mean, painful. 2012 at LSU, painful. But that was a game I think I was more so like, on the road, night game in Baton Rouge. I think you lost, but you were like, okay, like that it's not shocking. That 2013 Tennessee game, Marquez North, that is a name that still haunts Gamecock fans. That catch he made on the sideline, Tennessee, a bad Tennessee team. They make the field goal to beat South Carolina, and effectively, again, that's a game that keeps them out. So, those are just a few, man. There's so many of them, unfortunately. And you look the past couple of years. We've lost to Citadel, we've lost to App State, but those were like, I knew we were bad, so it was like almost like I was laughing. I was like, wow, we're like to this point. But those other games I mentioned were like South Carolina getting to this reaching, trying to get to a pinnacle and just being dashed. I mean, those are the worst. So there's been some tough ones, my man. I mean, that's literally just the tip of the iceberg when it comes to brutal Gamecock defeats.
And of course, that 06 blocked field goal attempt, that would have changed college football history because Florida would not have gone and won the BCS championship.
Yep, for sure. Yeah, that was Blake Mitchell, Sidney Rice, Andy Boyd, Jasper Brinkley, and that was Tim Tebow, of course, Chris Leak.
Sure.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, Spurrier's first trip back to the Swamp. You know, he had beaten them the year before in Williams-Brice. So, like I said, man, it's hard for me to think of a game that South Carolina played a more sound, complete football game and did not win against the caliber of team they were going against. You know what I mean? And also, people forget this too. I think it was the play before the field goal. Sidney Rice had like a false start that pushed the field goal back 5 yards. And you just think, what if, Ryan Succop was as good as any in the SEC? I mean, the dude, we just posted a clip the other day. Dude could boot 60 yarders. It was well within his range. But, and I've talked to Gator fans to say that's the loudest they've ever heard the Swamp when that kick was blocked. So tough, very tough.
You
very,
probably brought up 10 names that I haven't thought of for years and years and years and years.
Yeah.
But that's another one, Sidney Rice.
Yeah.
All right, Chris, talk about the game day experience at Williams-Brice and what makes it different. What's the feel? What's the vibe like when it's really juiced and ready to roll?
Yeah, Mark, it's electric. It's electric. I mean, that's the best way I can describe it. It's different because, of course, if anybody's that's been there, if you've seen the stadium even on TV, it's not an on-campus stadium. So you don't get that feel and that vibe that you get when you go to Athens, you go to Clemson, you go to any other on-campus type stadium. But the beauty of our setup is there's so much open area for tailgating. And, Gamecock fans, I think, are as great as they come to listen. They're loyal, they're passionate, they're, crazy college football fans. But, the interaction between the visitors and Gamecock fans is always a good one, I feel like. And you've got the fairgrounds, you've got Gamecock Park, you've got Seawells, which is where we threw our tailgate last year. You've got the frat lots for the students, memorial lot for the students. So many different places to tailgate, but just electricity, man. You hear Sandstorm, man, it's a lot like other schools where you see somebody else donning your school colors, man. And it doesn't matter their background, their history, their ethnicity, their religious beliefs, that becomes your best friend on game day. And, when South Carolina football is really buzzing, man, it is a raucous atmosphere. It's a raucous environment. It's almost hard to put into words. I mean, really, truly, the game day atmosphere, it's just, you can feel it. You can feel the intensity and the energy. I'll never forget going out there 2020, right, for the first football game, and we had 20% capacity. And, that's what I missed so much. I went out there for a tailgate, and I was like, this just feels eerie. This feels ominous. It feels strange. And getting back out there last year, and, we start early, games at 7. Hey, we'll get out there at noon, man. We're out there all day long. We'll get out there at 11. You know what I mean? It doesn't matter. But you can feel it, man. It's in the air. It's the excitement, the energy, the passion, the hope and optimism. I mean, all of it, man, bundled up into one. And then, as the seconds tick down, getting closer and closer to kickoff, it's just that intensity. It builds and it builds and it builds. And then you have Gamecock walk, and then, you finally are going into the stadium. And it's just, I would probably say similar to a lot of other SEC experiences, but it's unique in its own right. The tailgating scene, the setup, the people. I mean, it's absolutely electric. It's one that I'd highly suggest anybody tuned in or any college football fan that's been meaning to make the trip. I'd highly suggest it to you, man. It is, especially when South Carolina's got it rolling. Williams-Brice is one of the best venues for college football in this entire country. So hopefully we get back to those days, those 85,000 in the seats sooner rather than later. But no, I mean, it's certainly one that if you got on your to-do list, your bucket list, I highly suggest you check it off.
And you said Willie B. I've never heard that before.
Yeah, Willie B, man. That's what we the nickname, Williams-Brice Stadium, just call it Willie B. So
okay.
It's man, like I said, it is absolutely electric. I mean, it really is. Especially like you mentioned, when Carolina's got it rolling. Oh man, I mean, Gamecock fans, because when we get any semblance of hope, we're like sharks in the water that smell blood, man. It's just like, I mean, we are ready to go. So, and I'd expect. I mean, listen, if you want an idea what it's like, come week 3, South Carolina, Georgia at Williams-Brice Stadium. I'd assume it's going to be a night game or at worst a 3:30 kick. It will be a madhouse, I can guarantee you. So going to be a lot of fun.
All right, Chris, I got to hit you with this one as well. So I'm not talking about this happening next year or anytime soon, but I'm talking more from a conceptual standpoint, looking at resources, facilities, fan base, everything that you want to consider. Can South Carolina become a SEC power? I was going to say national power, but if you're an SEC power, you're a national power.
Right.
Is it possible?
I think it's possible, but the way I look at it, Mark, is I think you have to walk before you can run. And so I've talked about what are realistic expectations for South Carolina football. I've talked about that before many times. I think the goal right now, obviously, again, the ultimate goal, right? We all want to win every single game every year. We want to win the SEC title every single year. But when you're setting realistic, healthy expectations, I think a realistic goal for South Carolina football is winning 8 to 9 games per year, averaging, let's say, 8 wins over the course of a decade, averaging 8. And every 2 to 3, maybe 4 years, you've got the right quarterback, you've got a veteran team, the schedule breaks in your favor, whatever it is, right? And every 3 to 4 years, you're realistically making a push for Atlanta. Maybe you're reaching double digits, whatever, you're challenging the Georgias, the Tennessees, whoever else is up there at the time. You're realistically making that push because if you get to Atlanta, obviously you're going to have an opportunity to win the whole thing. So I think that those are realistic expectations. I really do. And if Shane Beamer does that over the course of a decade, guess what, Mark? He's the greatest coach in school history. So for some people, those expectations even sound unrealistic. But can South Carolina be a power? Yes. And I think you have to believe that, right? Like that's what keeps people showing up. We want to believe. And I think it's unfair, though. I think it's unfair to say South Carolina can't because look up the road at what your rival has done. Granted, it's in a different conference. I could argue it's much easier to build a program and sustain success the way Clemson has because they are in the ACC. And you can kick and scream and bitch and moan till you're blue in the face. I apologize for my language. But you can say whatever you want. It is easier to build a program and sustain success in that conference. However, I think it can be done. Like I said, I want to see South Carolina walk before they run, though, because it's like the chicken or the egg conversation. No pun intended, by the way, but it's the chicken or the egg. What do you have to do first? Do we need to become more successful and win more games because it all comes down to recruiting. I mean, your question, can South Carolina become a power? The question is, can they get the best talent every year? Can South Carolina go from, recruiting 20th to 25th to, top 10? What's it going to take? So my question, I think the chicken or the egg conversation, no pun intended, is does South Carolina need to win more to attract more elite talent, or do they have to get more elite talent first to win more games? And I think it's a combination of both, obviously, right? I think winning the Duke's Mayo Bowl, I think that, I think a lot of that helped tremendously in bringing guys like Spencer Rattler and Stogner and all these other transfers in, right? I think also understanding that right now we're not recruiting at that level. We're not recruiting at a top 5, top 10 level. You got to be card counters at the blackjack table, I think, like I told you last time. And you've got to be able, I had an assistant coach tell me from last year's staff at South Carolina. He's not there anymore. But he told me, he said, Chris, you know what separates a great recruiter from an average recruiter? It's not if you can land a top 100 player. I mean, those guys are kind of no-brainers, right? Those 5 stars, for the most part, It's, can a recruiter tell the difference between the 250th best player in the country and the 600th best player in the country, and which guy's going to pan out? Because they're both 3 stars. Like in the ratings, there's no difference. But can you go out and pick those guys? And again, that's what South Carolina did so well under Steve Spurrier. They hit on guys like DJ Swearinger, Melvin Ingram, the Pharaoh Coopers of the world. Connor Shaw was a 2-star. Dylan Thompson was a 2-star. They were able to hit on these guys, right? And so until you're bringing in classes like A&M, Georgia, even Clemson, you got to be able to sprinkle in a few 5 stars, but hit on those guys that I mentioned that maybe are flying under the radar for whatever reason. They're fitting your system, your scheme, your program, and you're getting the most out of them. So again, long story short, to answer your question, yes, I think South Carolina can get there. It's going to take time, and they've got to give Beamer time. They've got to be patient with him. Give him an opportunity to win some games, stat classes. It all comes down to recruiting. He knows. He was there when South Carolina went to the SEC championship. They didn't go to the SEC championship just because they had good players. I mean, you look at a replay of the Bama game from 10 or look at any games from 11, 12, 13, and you look at the names on defense. We're talking about NFL, Pro Bowler, and like it takes players. It's all about Jimmys and Joes, man. I mean, players lose games, coaches win them. So I think South Carolina can get there. I think it's about taking baby steps, but you got to go get those players because, again, it's the players that are on the field and it's the players that win the games. But I think the resources, Mark, the support, I think it's all there to have big success in Columbia. I sort of look at this program as a sleeping giant. I really do. And I think, and we all believe, fingers crossed, Shane Beamer is going to be that guy to take this program where it's never been before.
But you also mentioned patience with him because there's got to be a pretty good portion of the fan base, and you talk to them all the time, that are thinking, oh, we were 2-8, 7-6, bowl win. We're just off and running. This is not that it's easy, but there's not going to be any bumps in the road. We're just going to keep boom, boom. We'll go to 9-3, then we'll keep going. And it's not necessarily going to be that easy. So there might have to be some, there's sometimes 2 steps up and then you take a step back and to progress.
Yeah. I had somebody tell me one time, Mark, that SEC football fans and bad doctors, they both have one thing in common. They have no patience. So, and that's a terrible dad joke for you that I give you permission to take and use on your show. But no, I mean, it's for sure. I understand these coaches are paid a lot. And again, we don't have patience, but it's year 2, man. I mean, when Beamer was hired, I just looked at it as, okay, this is a minimum 5-year thing. Like, you gotta, the reason, again, you look at Carolina, 10, 11, 12, 13, it's not just about getting a couple good players. It's like the depth. If that's what it comes down to, that competitive depth. I mean, Carolina was 2-3 deep. You look at the line of scrimmage, they could throw that second team D line out there and not miss a beat. I've had Brad Lawing on my show who coached D line for us. He told me, he said, Chris, I was 9-10 deep. 9-10 players. I felt good about rotating in. That's what it comes down to. It's about that competitive depth, not falling off when you put your 2s in. That's what makes Bama, Bama. That's what makes Georgia, Georgia. That's what makes the elites, is they've got that depth. So give Beamer time, let him build, let him stack classes. And in the meantime, win as many as you can and get the most out of the talent that you do have on campus, right? Get the most out of that talent. But also as a fan base, just keep in mind, this is a long-term thing. Clemson, for example, we hate talking about it. That didn't happen overnight. That was something that took years. Clemson existed for years before people started giving them credit, and they got to the winning the way they are now, or at least have recently. So it's going to take time. Allow Beamer to build. Allow him to work. Hey, he's still a young head coach. He's only got a year of experience under his belt. He's going to evolve. Allow him to evolve. Allow him to grow as a head coach. Allow him to recruit. I think if Gamecock fans can do that, Mark, I do think we will be happy on the end. And I'm not saying that Beamer's going to win an SEC championship or he's going to win a national title, but I really do feel like Shane Beamer will get this program to a point of stability that it has been sorely lacking for so long. Because even the Spurrier era, you know what I mean? Like, yeah, you won 3 straight years, 11 wins in a row, or 11 wins 3 straight years, but then you drop to 7. Then you have that terrible 2-10 year or 3-9 year, whatever. Like, this program needs stability. It needs stability. You know what I mean? So I think Beamer can be that guy. He's a young coach. I mean, I'd love to see Beamer there for the next couple decades, if it's possible. You know what I mean? Like, just to have that sense of stability, kind of like what his dad did at Virginia Tech. Give a program that sense of stability. If we do that and we're patient, I think we'll be happy on the other side.
Chris Phillips, appreciate it each and every time. Great conversation with him. You got to catch him at the Spurs Up podcast right here on YouTube or on your favorite audio platform. Chris, appreciate you stopping by and filling up the conversation. Good stuff.
Mark, always a pleasure, my friend. Anytime.